The sound of hammering echoed through the house, a constant reminder of the renovations that had consumed my days. I stood in the kitchen, surveying the chaos. Dust particles danced in the sunlight streaming through the window, illuminating the remnants of what once was a tidy space. Now, it was filled with paint cans, tools scattered haphazardly, and an overwhelming sense of monotony that clung to me like a heavy fog. My husband, Tom, had been buried in work lately. He often returned home late, too exhausted to notice how much I longed for connection. The silence of our home felt oppressive at times. I busied myself with chores and projects, but they only served to highlight my isolation. The renovations were supposed to breathe new life into our space, but instead, they mirrored my own stagnant existence. I heard footsteps approaching and turned to see Mark, Tom's nephew, stepping into the room. He was 28 and had always been a pleasant presence during family gatherings, charming and easygoing. "Need some help?" he asked with a grin that seemed to light up the dim kitchen. "Sure," I replied, trying to mask my surprise at his sudden appearance. I could use an extra pair of hands. As we began working together on the living room walls, painting them a soft gray, I found myself stealing glances at him more often than necessary. His hands moved deftly with the brush. There was something captivating about his focus. The air between us felt charged in ways I hadn't anticipated. "Tom said you were taking on this project alone," Mark remarked casually as he dipped his brush into the paint tray. "Yeah, well, he's busy with work," I replied. "I thought it would be nice to refresh things around here." He nodded as if he understood more than just the renovation project at hand. "It's good to keep busy," he said thoughtfully. We worked side by side in comfortable silence for a while until Mark broke it again. "You know," he began hesitantly, "I've always admired your ability to make this place feel like home." His words struck me unexpectedly. It felt like a compliment layered with something deeper, a recognition of my efforts that had gone unnoticed for so long. I felt warmth spread through me. Perhaps it was just the paint fumes or something more profound. As we shifted our focus from walls to furniture arrangement later that afternoon, I noticed how effortlessly our conversation flowed. We discussed everything from favorite local coffee shops, he preferred Stumptown for its rich brews, to weekend plans involving local festivals that were just around the corner. "I love those street fairs," he said with enthusiasm. "The food trucks are amazing." "Right? And there's always live music." A smile crept onto my face as memories of laughter and joy flooded back, days when life felt vibrant and full. But as we shared these moments, guilt crept in like an unwelcome guest at a party. Was it wrong to enjoy his company this much? Tom had always been my anchor, yet here I was feeling an unexpected spark around his nephew, a feeling both thrilling and terrifying. Later that evening, as we stepped back to admire our work, the fresh coat of paint transforming the room, I caught Mark looking at me differently than before. There was an intensity in his gaze that sent shivers down my spine. "Kate," he started softly, but before he could finish his thought, there was a loud crash outside, a neighbor's fence collapsing under pressure from their overgrown tree branches. We both jumped at the sound. Laughter bubbled up between us nervously as we glanced outside before returning our focus back on each other. The moment hung heavy in the air between us, a fleeting connection charged with unspoken possibilities. "I guess we should get back to work," I suggested awkwardly, trying to dismiss whatever had just passed between us. Mark nodded slowly but didn't move away from me right away. Instead, he leaned closer as if drawn by some magnetic force neither of us could explain. The next few days blurred together as we continued working on different areas of the house, each task bringing us closer while simultaneously complicating everything within me. Mark's presence became a welcome distraction from my mundane routine. Every laugh shared felt like stepping further away from what I knew and into uncharted territory. Yet beneath that excitement lay an undercurrent of turmoil. Every stolen glance and lingering touch sent waves of guilt crashing over me like relentless tides against rocky shores. Was this what infidelity felt like? A rush followed by dread? I found myself wrestling with these thoughts late at night when Tom returned home late once again after another exhausting day at work, his tired eyes barely registering my presence before retreating into familiar patterns of silence and solitude. Then came one fateful afternoon when Mark offered to help fix the broken sprinkler system outside, a mundane task made exhilarating by his easy laughter filling the air around us as we worked together under the warm sun. While crouched down adjusting pipes and fittings beneath our feet, our shoulders brushed against each other more than once, an innocent gesture that ignited sparks within me anew each time they happened until finally. "Mark," I whispered breathlessly without thinking it through completely until it was out there hanging between us like ripe fruit ready for picking. He turned towards me then, the world fading away until there was only him standing close enough for me to feel his warmth radiating toward me amidst all else swirling around us. And suddenly everything shifted dramatically when our lips met briefly before pulling apart abruptly in shock as if struck by lightning itself. "What just happened?" I gasped breathlessly while looking wide-eyed back at him, both terrified yet exhilarated by what transpired moments ago. Before either one could process fully what had occurred between us though, the sound of tires crunching gravel echoed nearby signaling someone's imminent arrival, and just like that, reality crashed back down upon us. Mark quickly stepped back out of sight behind some bushes while my heart raced wildly within its cage. Who could it be? What would happen next? As uncertainty loomed ahead threatening all newfound connections formed amidst chaos, I braced myself for whatever awaited beyond those gates. My heart pounded in my chest as I strained to hear the footsteps approaching. The sound grew louder, and I could see the outline of a figure moving through the garden. Anxiety twisted in my stomach, mingling with an odd thrill that had become all too familiar. Mark's face emerged from the shadows, and relief washed over me momentarily. "Kate," he whispered, glancing around as if to ensure no one was watching. "Here," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. I stepped closer to him, drawn by a magnetic pull that seemed to grow stronger each day we spent together. "Did you hear that?" Mark asked, his brow furrowing with concern. I nodded slowly, still feeling the remnants of our last encounter linger between us. The kiss had been unexpected, a spark igniting amidst the mundane chaos of home renovations. Now, standing here again, I felt that same rush of emotion bubbling to the surface. "I think it's just the wind," I said, trying to sound casual despite the tension in my voice. Mark took a step closer, his eyes searching mine for something unspoken. "I don't want to push you into anything," he said softly. The sincerity in his tone tugged at my heartstrings. Guilt crept back in like an unwelcome guest. "I don't know what this is," I admitted. "It feels wrong. But it also feels real," he countered gently. We stood there for a moment, caught in a delicate balance between desire and morality. The air was thick with unspoken words and lingering touches. It was then that I noticed how close we were, how easily our bodies aligned as if they were meant to fit together. "Maybe we should just focus on the renovations," I suggested weakly, hoping to deflect from the growing tension. "Sure," he replied reluctantly but didn't move away. Instead, he reached out and brushed a stray hair behind my ear, a simple gesture that sent shivers down my spine. As we turned back toward the house, an idea struck me. "Let's tackle the living room today," I proposed, trying to shift our focus back onto something tangible. "Sounds good," Mark said with a smile that lit up his face, one that made my heart flutter against all logic. We moved inside and began gathering supplies for painting. The scent of fresh paint filled the air as we rolled color onto the walls together. Each stroke felt like an act of rebellion against my mundane life. Each laugh shared over spilled paint was a reminder of how alive I felt in his presence. "Do you think your uncle would approve of this color?" Mark asked playfully as he held up a brush covered in bright blue paint. "I think he'd be shocked," I laughed, wiping a bit of paint from my cheek with the back of my hand. He prefers neutral tones. Mark chuckled but then grew serious for a moment. What if your husband finds out about us? The question hung heavily between us like an impending storm cloud. My heart sank at the thought, guilt gnawed at me again like an insatiable beast. I don't know, I whispered honestly, fear creeping into my voice. Mark stepped closer again, lowering his voice conspiratorially. We're just two people working together, right? His words sent conflicting emotions surging through me, comfort mingled with dread as I grappled with what we were becoming together amidst these renovations and secrets. As we painted side by side, our arms brushed against each other more than once, each contact igniting sparks that left me breathless yet terrified of where this path might lead us both. In an attempt to lighten the mood again, I joked about needing more coffee breaks than usual due to all this hard work ahead of us. Coffee sounds perfect, Mark agreed enthusiastically before pausing thoughtfully as if weighing something on his mind before speaking again. You know, you could always leave your husband. His words struck me like lightning, unexpected and shocking yet strangely enticing at once. The thought had crossed my mind before, but hearing it spoken aloud made it feel more tangible somehow, more real than ever before. I can't just leave him, I replied quickly but not without hesitation. Uncertainty seeped into every word as guilt clawed its way back into focus once more. But do you want to stay? Mark pressed gently but firmly, his gaze unwavering as it searched mine for any sign of doubt or desire hidden beneath layers of confusion and turmoil within myself. I don't know what I want anymore. The admission slipped from my lips before I could stop it. Vulnerability laid bare between us like an open wound ready to bleed out all those fears I'd kept locked away until now. Mark stepped even closer until our bodies almost touched, the warmth radiating off him beckoning me forward while simultaneously pushing me away from everything familiar and safe outside these walls surrounding us both, now filled with so much uncharted territory ahead waiting patiently for exploration together if only we dared take those first steps forward. Suddenly there was a loud crash from outside, a noise so jarring it shattered whatever bubble had formed around us in that moment. My heart raced again as adrenaline surged through me anew, reality crashing back down upon us like waves breaking against jagged rocks. What was that? Mark exclaimed, instinctively moving toward the window while glancing back at me uncertainly as if asking whether or not we should investigate further into whatever chaos lay beyond those walls separating us from everything else outside. I followed closely behind him, peering out cautiously through parted curtains, the sight beyond sending chills racing down my spine. A group of neighborhood kids had knocked over one of our yard decorations. A ceramic flamingo now lay shattered across their driveway. Just kids being kids, Mark muttered dismissively, but even he couldn't hide how visibly shaken up he appeared after everything else we'd shared moments prior, amidst laughter now replaced by tension hanging thickly around us both. Before either could say another word though, it happened. My phone buzzed loudly on its charger nearby, cutting through all remaining silence lingering between us. I grabbed it instantly, fearing who might be calling at such an inconvenient time. Seeing my husband's name flash across screen sent panic surging through every part within me. I hesitated briefly, unsure whether or not answering would reveal too much about everything happening right here right now. But there was no time left anymore. With shaky hands trembling slightly, I answered hesitantly, wondering what awaited on other end. The tension in the air was palpable as I stood there, phone pressed to my ear. Mark's laughter still echoed in my mind, a stark contrast to the anxiety tightening my chest. My husband's voice came through, steady yet laced with curiosity. Hey, Kate. Just checking in. How's everything going at home? Good, I replied, forcing a smile that no one could see. Just, working on the kitchen. Is Mark still helping? He asked. I hesitated again, the truth teetering on the edge of my lips. Yeah, he's here. The admission felt heavy, laden with implications I couldn't fully grasp. Great. I'll be home a little later. Just finishing up a meeting. His casual tone sent a shiver down my spine. I hung up and turned back to the kitchen, where Mark was busy cutting tiles for the backsplash. The sight of him focused and determined made my heart race in an unsettling way. "How are you holding up?" Mark asked without looking up. "Just peachy," I replied too quickly. "You?" He chuckled softly and wiped his brow with the back of his hand. "Can't complain. This is actually kind of fun." I nodded, but inside I was wrestling with a storm of emotions. The thrill of working together had morphed into something much more complicated than either of us had anticipated. As we continued to lay out tiles, our shoulders brushed occasionally, a simple touch that ignited sparks of connection. "I've always liked working with my hands," Mark said suddenly, breaking the silence that had settled between us like a thick fog. "Really? What do you want to do?" I asked, genuinely curious about this side of him I hadn't known before. "I'm thinking about going into architecture," he replied, his eyes lighting up as he spoke about his dreams. "I love creating spaces that people can enjoy." "That sounds amazing," I said softly, feeling an unexpected admiration swell within me. Mark looked at me then, our eyes locking for a moment that felt electric. There was an intensity in his gaze that made me forget everything else, the renovations, my husband's impending return, everything faded into the background. "We should celebrate when we finish this," he suggested lightly. "Celebrate?" I echoed nervously. "Yeah. Maybe go out for coffee or something? Just to unwind after all this chaos." He smiled at me, and it felt like an invitation to something more than just coffee. Before I could respond or even think about what it meant for us both, laughter bubbled up between us as we joked about our tile selection gone wrong earlier that day, a miscalculation that led to an awkwardly placed design on the wall. In that moment of shared humor and relief from our mounting tension, our lips met unexpectedly amidst our laughter. It was brief but electrifying enough to send shockwaves through me. The warmth of his mouth against mine was both thrilling and terrifying all at once. "What just happened?" Mark whispered as we pulled apart, both startled by what had just transpired. "I don't know," I stammered back nervously while biting my lip in disbelief over what we had just done. The air around us thickened again as reality set in. What did this mean? My heart raced not only from excitement but also fear of where this path might lead us if we continued down it together. "Maybe we should focus on finishing this project," he suggested awkwardly after a moment's pause filled with uncertainty and unspoken words hanging between us like unfinished tiles waiting to be laid down perfectly in place. "Right." My voice wavered slightly as I turned back toward the backsplash without really seeing it anymore. All I could think about were those fleeting moments shared between us, the kiss lingering like an unfinished thought in my mind while trying hard not to dwell on its implications too deeply just yet. As we resumed working side by side amidst lingering tension crackling like electricity in the air around us, I couldn't shake off how different everything felt now compared to just days ago when life seemed so mundane before this renovation began stirring something within me that long lay dormant beneath layers upon layers of routine responsibilities associated with being someone's wife and mother instead of being simply Kate again, a woman yearning for something more than what she'd settled into. Over years spent tending solely to others' needs instead of her own desires bubbling underneath quietly waiting for release until now. Hours passed quickly as we focused on tiling. Every cut tile laid down felt symbolic somehow, each piece fitting into place while simultaneously pushing boundaries further than either one dared imagine before today's unexpected turn toward intimacy sparked between us amidst chaos surrounding renovations transforming not only our home but also ourselves along with it. Eventually night fell outside, casting shadows throughout rooms filled with remnants from earlier projects scattered around haphazardly, reminding me how much work still lay ahead even if emotions were shifting beneath surface level understanding too complex yet clear. Enough already signaling changes underway beyond mere physical labor involved within walls surrounding us both right now. Mark stepped outside briefly for fresh air, leaving me alone momentarily, allowing thoughts swirl uncontrollably through mind, racing faster than usual, heartbeats echoing loudly against quiet stillness enveloping space around me. What does any of this mean? Where do we go from here? Just then my phone buzzed again, pulling attention away from spiraling thoughts, my husband's name flashing across screen once more, sending panic surging through every part within me. I hesitated briefly, unsure whether answering would reveal too much about everything happening right here, right now. But there was no time left anymore. With shaky hands trembling slightly, I answered hesitantly, wondering what awaited on other end. Hey Kate. Sorry to call so late. His cheerful tone clashed sharply against inner turmoil brewing inside, while trying hard not let worry seep through cracks, revealing truths hidden beneath surface-level interactions lately occurring between everyone involved within these walls surrounding us all right now, including him too. What's going on? My voice came out steadier than expected, despite racing heartbeat pounding loudly against ribcage, threatening escape any moment if left unchecked long enough, without proper outlet found soon enough before consequences catch up unexpectedly later down road ahead. The sun peeked through the half-drawn curtains, casting a warm glow over the remnants of our renovation chaos. The smell of fresh paint lingered in the air, mingling with the faint scent of sawdust from the kitchen. I lay there, tangled in thoughts that felt like they were suffocating me. Mark had left early, but the memory of our night together clung to me like a second skin. I rolled out of bed, trying to shake off the heaviness that had settled in my chest. The walls of this house had witnessed so much: laughter, tears, and now this tangled web of emotions I never anticipated weaving into my life. As I moved through the house, I caught glimpses of what was once a familiar space, now transformed into something unrecognizable. Each corner held echoes of laughter shared with Mark and conversations that blurred the lines of propriety. While brewing coffee in the kitchen, I replayed our late-night conversation. We talked about everything and nothing, our dreams, disappointments, and moments that shaped us. In those hours beneath dimmed lights, we spent the night together in a way that felt both liberating and terrifying. The intimacy we shared felt like a secret worth keeping, but also one that could unravel everything if discovered. My phone buzzed on the counter, pulling me from my reverie. It was a message from Mark. Can we talk later? Need to sort some things out. My stomach twisted at his words. What could he possibly want to sort out? The thrill of our connection was tinged with an undercurrent of anxiety. I poured myself a cup of coffee and stepped outside onto the porch. The morning air was crisp and refreshing. It felt like a brief escape from my tangled thoughts. Neighbors were already bustling about their daily routines, mowing lawns, watering gardens, exchanging pleasantries. It struck me how normal everything seemed around me while my life was spiraling into disarray. The door creaked open behind me as my husband entered with his usual morning cheerfulness. Good morning. You're up early, he said with a smile that momentarily dulled my worries. Just enjoying some coffee, I replied, forcing a smile back at him. He leaned against the doorframe, looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite decipher. You okay? You seem different. Different? I echoed lightly, trying to brush it off. Yeah, he said slowly, his brow furrowing slightly as if he were searching for something hidden beneath my facade. I took a sip of coffee to stall for time while my mind raced through potential responses. Just tired from all the renovations, I finally said. He nodded but didn't look entirely convinced. Well, don't forget we have dinner plans tonight with some friends. Of course, I replied quickly before he could probe further. As he turned back inside to get ready for work, an unsettling feeling settled over me again, a reminder that while I was trying to navigate this new territory with Mark, life continued on its predictable path around us. After breakfast, I busied myself with cleaning up remnants from yesterday's work, paintbrushes still stained with color and tools scattered across surfaces waiting for their final placement in drawers and cabinets once everything was complete. Each item reminded me of Mark's hands brushing against mine or his laughter echoing through empty rooms as we transformed them together. The day dragged on slowly until noon when Mark texted again, "Can you meet at our usual spot? Need to talk." My heart raced at his urgency. It felt like both an invitation and a warning. I decided to take a break from cleaning and headed to our local coffee shop, a cozy nook filled with mismatched furniture and local art lining the walls where we often found solace amidst chaos. As I walked through the door, familiar scents enveloped me, rich coffee mingling with baked goods creating an ambience that felt both comforting yet charged with tension. Mark sat at our usual table near the window. His expression was serious as he motioned for me to join him. The playful banter we usually shared felt absent today, as if gravity weighed heavily on both our shoulders. "What's going on?" I asked cautiously as I settled into my seat across from him. He took a deep breath before speaking. "I've been thinking about us." His eyes searched mine for understanding or perhaps reassurance. "What do you mean?" My voice trembled slightly despite my efforts to remain composed. "I know what happened between us changes everything," he said quietly but firmly. My heart sank further into uncertainty. It wasn't just physical, it was emotional too. The bond we forged during those late nights working side by side had morphed into something deeper than either of us anticipated. "I care about you," he continued hesitantly but earnestly. "But it feels risky." "Risky?" The word hung between us like an uninvited guest at a gathering meant for two close friends navigating uncharted waters together. "Yes," he replied softly but firmly. "What if your husband finds out? What if someone sees us?" His words pierced through my heart like shards of glass. They reflected truths I had been avoiding all along. The reality that this affair could unravel not just our lives but also those around us who remained blissfully unaware of what transpired behind closed doors within these walls we'd worked so hard to transform into something beautiful together. "I know," I whispered back, feeling tears prick at the corners of my eyes as emotions surged forward threatening to spill over uncontrollably if left unchecked any longer without proper outlet found soon enough before consequences catch up unexpectedly later down road ahead. Mark reached across the table and took my hand gently in his, an anchor amidst rising tides threatening to pull us under entirely without warning or mercy shown towards anyone involved including ourselves too. "We need time apart," he said finally after what felt like hours passing silently between us without words spoken aloud except those exchanged softly just moments ago before reality crashed down upon us both hard enough leaving bruises behind unseen yet deeply felt nonetheless, even now still lingering here right now too. I nodded slowly despite every part within wanting desperately not let go, not yet. Not when everything hung delicately in balance still waiting patiently hoping for resolution found somewhere eventually along this winding path stretching far ahead filled uncertain twists turns waiting patiently ahead just beyond reach always beckoning onward ever. Onward until finally reaching destination arrived safely home again someday somehow. The sound of the front door creaking open jolted me from my thoughts. My heart raced as I turned, glancing nervously at Mark, who stood frozen in the hallway, eyes wide with panic. We had just shared a moment that felt like both an awakening and a descent into chaos. Now, with my husband home earlier than expected, the fragile bubble of our secret felt ready to burst. "Kate," my husband's voice called out, echoing through the house. The casual tone belied the urgency I sensed in his footsteps approaching. I felt a surge of adrenaline as I gestured frantically for Mark to hide behind the half-open door of the bathroom. He slipped away just in time, his face a mixture of fear and exhilaration. "Yeah?" I called back, trying to keep my voice steady. I could hear him moving through the living room, likely assessing the renovation progress that had consumed my days and nights lately. As he entered the kitchen, I plastered on a smile, hoping it would mask the turmoil roiling within me. You're home early, I said, trying to sound casual while my heart pounded in anticipation. I finished up some things ahead of schedule, he replied, his brow furrowing slightly as he looked around at our half-finished project. How's it going here? It's coming along, I said quickly, avoiding his gaze. Just touched up some paint in the living room. He nodded but didn't seem convinced. Looks like you've been busy. His tone was light, but there was an undercurrent of scrutiny in his eyes that made me feel exposed. I glanced toward the bathroom door where Mark was hidden. The seconds stretched painfully as silence enveloped us both. I could almost hear my heart thumping in my ears. I didn't expect you back so soon, I said again, desperate to steer this conversation away from any potential suspicions. I thought we could have dinner together, he suggested, moving closer to me, his presence filling the space with familiarity that felt oddly suffocating right now. Sure. That sounds nice. The words felt heavy on my tongue as they left my mouth. Dinner felt like a trap, a return to normalcy that now seemed impossible for me. As he moved toward the fridge to grab something to drink, I stole another glance at Mark's hiding spot. He was still there, tension radiating from him like heat waves on pavement. My stomach twisted with guilt and desire all at once. How had we come to this? You okay? My husband's voice broke through my thoughts again as he turned back toward me with a questioning look. Of course. Just thinking about how much work we have left, I replied hastily. He smiled softly and stepped closer again. We'll get it done together. There was warmth in his gaze that made me feel even worse about what was happening behind closed doors mere feet away from us. Right, I murmured non-committally. The weight of our unspoken words hung heavily between us now, every second stretched taut with unacknowledged truths. Just then, a sudden noise, a thud followed by a muffled curse, came from the bathroom where Mark was hidden. My breath hitched as both our heads snapped toward that direction. What was that? My husband asked sharply, his demeanor shifting instantly into alertness. Panic surged through me as I scrambled for an explanation. I think maybe something fell over while I was cleaning. Before he could respond or investigate further, Mark emerged from behind the door looking sheepish yet defiant all at once. It was clear he hadn't meant for things to escalate like this either, but here we were, caught between choices neither of us had anticipated making when we began this renovation project together. My husband's eyes narrowed slightly at Mark's sudden appearance. Confusion flickered across his face before settling into something more serious, a mix of suspicion and concern that sent chills down my spine. Mark? What are you doing here? His tone held an edge now, one that made it clear he wasn't buying any excuses easily anymore. I came to help Kate finish up some things, Mark replied smoothly enough, but there was an underlying tension in his voice that didn't escape either of us. My heart sank further into dread. This wasn't how it was supposed to go down, not like this. Not when everything felt so precariously balanced already between us three now standing awkwardly in this kitchen filled with remnants of laughter and secrets shared only moments ago before reality crashed down upon us all unexpectedly hard enough leaving. Bruises behind, unseen yet deeply felt nonetheless, even now still lingering here right now too. My husband crossed his arms over his chest defensively, every moment stretched out painfully long as silence enveloped us again until finally he spoke up again. Kate? Yes? My voice came out barely above a whisper despite everything swirling within me clamoring for clarity amidst chaos surrounding us right now. The air thickening with unspoken words left hanging dangerously close above our heads poised ready fall crashing down around us any second now if someone dared speak them aloud first. What exactly is going on here? His question hung heavy in the air like an accusation waiting patiently for its moment to strike deep enough leaving wounds open raw bleeding freely without any hope healing ever again after what lay ahead inevitably unfolding before us all next. I opened my mouth to respond but found no words coming forth. only silence filled space between us, thickening further until finally breaking apart, shattering everything surrounding me into pieces too small ever put back together whole again afterward, no matter how desperately needed they might be later on down road somewhere far beyond reach. Right now still waiting patiently, hoping resolution found somewhere eventually along this winding path stretching far ahead, filled uncertain twists, turns. Waiting patiently ahead, just beyond reach, always beckoning onward, ever onward, until finally reaching destination, arrived safely home again someday somehow. In that moment, the weight of unspoken truths loomed larger than life itself. It became glaringly evident, nothing would remain unchanged after today. Not between me and my husband, nor between myself and Mark either, regardless how much time spent trying ignore realities lurking beneath surface, threatening bubble wrap existence built around lives lived together thus far without truly acknowledging depths hidden below. Waiting patiently, ready emerge whenever least expected, catching off guard, leaving trails destruction behind, left unchecked, spiraling downward spirals ever deeper into shadows, creeping closer inch by inch, threatening consume everything known, cherished, loved dearly, forevermore lost unless something intervened soon enough before it became too late already. Slipping through fingers, grasping tightly, holding on to memories, fading fast, slipping away forevermore, never returning home again afterward, feeling whole ever again afterward, either way, no matter outcome faced next. The uncertainty loomed heavy above our heads, casting dark shadows across fragile bonds, tethering each one tightly bound together still despite everything, unraveling slowly bit by bit, leaving nothing but echoes remaining behind. Once laughter faded, replaced instead by silence growing louder, filling voids where once hope thrived, brightly illuminating paths forward, leading onward toward brighter tomorrows ahead, waiting patiently just beyond reach, always beckoning onward, ever onward, until finally reaching destination, arrived safely home again someday somehow. The morning sun filtered through the kitchen window, illuminating the remnants of our recent chaos. I stood at the counter, my fingers tracing the edges of the unfinished backsplash, each tile a reminder of the choices I had made. The air was thick with tension, and I could almost hear my heart racing in response to the silence that enveloped me. My husband had left for work earlier than usual, and I was left alone with my thoughts, a swirling mix of guilt and confusion. As I cleaned up the remnants of breakfast, my mind drifted back to Mark. His message from last night lingered in my thoughts like a haunting melody. "Can we talk? I need to see you." The words tugged at my heartstrings, igniting a spark of excitement amidst the turmoil. But with that spark came a wave of dread. What would happen if my husband found out? What would it mean for my family? I poured myself a cup of coffee, hoping to drown out the noise in my head. The aroma filled the air, momentarily soothing my frayed nerves. Just as I took a sip, there was a knock at the door. My heart raced as I set down the mug and walked cautiously toward it. "Hey there." It was Mrs. Thompson from next door, her bright smile contrasting sharply with my internal chaos. "I just wanted to check in on you during this renovation madness." "Thanks, Mrs. Thompson," I replied, forcing a smile as I opened the door wider. "It's been quite an adventure." "I heard you've got some help around here," she said with a knowing glint in her eye. "Saw that nice young man working on your place yesterday." My stomach dropped at her words. "Oh. Mark? He's just helping with some repairs." "Just helping," she teased lightly, but her tone hinted at more than mere curiosity. I felt heat creeping up my cheeks and quickly changed the subject. "How are things over at your place?" We chatted for a few minutes about neighborhood happenings while I tried to keep my composure intact. But Mrs. Thompson's comment echoed in my mind long after she left. Had she seen more than she let on? Had anyone else noticed our growing closeness? Once back inside, I couldn't shake off the unease that settled over me like a heavy blanket. I returned to cleaning but found myself distracted by every creak of the house settling or rustle outside. What if Mark came by unexpectedly? What if he saw me in this state of disarray? The phone buzzed on the counter, breaking through my spiraling thoughts. It was Mark. "Can we meet later?" Need to discuss some things. My heart raced again. Excitement fought against fear as I considered what he might say. I put down the phone and paced around the living room, each step echoing louder than before in this empty space filled with memories, some warm and others now tainted by secrecy. Later that afternoon, while organizing paint cans in the garage, another wave of anxiety washed over me as I recalled how easily we had slipped into this new reality together, how quickly everything had changed between us during those renovations. Just then, there was another knock on the door. This time it felt more ominous than before. Hesitant but curious, I opened it to find Mark standing there with his usual casual charm, but today something seemed different about him. "Hey," he said softly, his voice low as though he were afraid someone might overhear us. "Hi," I managed to reply while trying to mask how flustered his presence made me feel. He stepped inside without waiting for an invitation and closed the door behind him, a gesture that sent shivers down my spine. "I wanted to talk about last night," he began carefully as he leaned against the wall near where we had spent so many hours together working on projects. The mention of last night brought back vivid memories, our laughter mingled with whispered secrets and stolen moments that felt both thrilling and dangerous. "I've been thinking," he paused for effect before continuing, "this can't just be about renovations anymore." His words hung heavy between us like unspoken promises waiting to be fulfilled, a dangerous game we were both playing without fully understanding its consequences. "What do you mean?" My voice trembled slightly despite my efforts to sound composed. "I mean, we can't pretend this is just about fixing up your house." His gaze locked onto mine with an intensity that made it hard to breathe. "There's something real here." A knot formed in my stomach as realization washed over me. His words echoed what I'd been trying so hard to ignore. The undeniable connection we shared was becoming something much deeper than either of us anticipated. But just then came another knock at the door, a firm rapping that shattered our moment like glass breaking underfoot. "Kate. Are you home?" It was Michael's voice, my husband, cutting through everything like a sharp blade slicing through foggy uncertainty. Panic surged within me. Mark's eyes widened in alarm as he instinctively took a step back toward the shadows cast by furniture around us. I held up a finger to indicate silence while desperately trying not to betray any signs of panic or guilt etched across my face. "Just a minute." I called out too loudly before turning back toward Mark, who looked ready to bolt any second now. "We have to hide," he whispered urgently while glancing around for an escape route before settling on retreating into one of our unfinished rooms off the hallway, a space filled with dust-covered items waiting patiently for their time under fresh coats of paint once again someday soon. As Michael entered through one doorway while we slipped quietly into another unseen corner hidden from view entirely, my heart raced faster than ever before. I knew deep down that everything had changed irrevocably between us all. And somehow this moment could lead only toward chaos ahead. The morning light filtered through the half-finished windows, casting a warm glow on the remnants of our renovation chaos. I stood in the kitchen, staring at the newly installed backsplash, its glossy surface reflecting my conflicted feelings. My heart raced as I thought about Mark's presence in my life, how he had become a source of excitement amidst the mundane. But now, with Michael's early return and the tension hanging thick in the air, I felt trapped between two worlds. As I wiped down the counter, my mind drifted back to our last encounter, the way we laughed while painting, how our hands brushed against each other. There was a thrill in those moments that I craved, yet guilt gnawed at me like a persistent shadow. The renovations had brought us closer together, but they also amplified my internal struggle. What did I truly want? I glanced out the window and spotted Mark pulling into the driveway. My heart sank. He shouldn't be here now. Michael could come back any minute. Panic surged through me as I debated whether to send him away or let him in for one last touch-up on our project. The doorbell rang before I could decide. "Kate." Mark called softly from outside. "Just a minute." I shouted back, hastily smoothing my hair and adjusting my apron. I opened the door slightly, peeking out to see his hopeful smile. "Hey," he said, his voice cheerful despite my evident distress. "I thought we could finish up today." "Now?" I replied hesitantly. "Yeah. Just some final touches," he insisted. I sighed and stepped aside to let him in. "Okay, but we need to be quick." As Mark entered, a wave of warmth washed over me, a familiar comfort mixed with an undercurrent of anxiety. He moved around the kitchen with ease, grabbing tools and supplies as if it was just another day of renovations. But for me, each moment felt charged with unspoken words and unresolved tensions. "Everything all right?" he asked casually as he worked on adjusting a cabinet door. "Just dealing with some things," I replied vaguely, trying to keep my voice steady. Mark paused and looked at me intently. "You know you can talk to me if you need to." His concern was genuine but only deepened my turmoil. How had we come to this? A house filled with laughter and secrets, each corner echoing with memories that both thrilled and terrified me. "I'm fine," I said too quickly. He nodded but didn't seem convinced. As we worked side by side in silence for a few moments, the tension grew palpable again, an electric charge hovering just below the surface. "I've been thinking about what you said before," Mark finally broke the silence. "What do you mean?" "When we were working on the living room, about wanting more from life." His gaze pierced through me like a spotlight illuminating all my hidden desires. That conversation felt like ages ago, a time when everything seemed simpler before complications tangled our lives together like vines around an old tree trunk. "I don't know what I want anymore," I admitted quietly, feeling vulnerable under his scrutiny. Mark stepped closer, his voice low and earnest. "You deserve happiness, Kate." His words hung between us like an unspoken promise, one that both excited and frightened me. Just then, Michael's car pulled into the driveway again. Dread washed over me like cold water splashing against bare skin. "He's back," I whispered urgently as panic gripped my chest. Mark's eyes widened in alarm as he quickly moved toward the back door leading into the garden. "I'll hide out here until he goes inside." "No. You can't just sneak out." But before I could protest further or think of another solution, Mark slipped outside just as Michael entered through the front door. "Hey! You're home early," I exclaimed too cheerfully while trying to mask my racing heart. Michael glanced around suspiciously before settling his gaze on me. "Yeah, work was slow today." He paused for a moment before adding cautiously, "What's going on?" "Nothing. Just finishing up some last-minute touches." My voice sounded strained even to myself as anxiety bubbled beneath the surface of normalcy. He studied me closely, too closely, and for a moment it felt like all our secrets hung suspended between us in an invisible thread ready to snap at any moment. Michael shrugged off his jacket and headed toward the kitchen where Mark had just been working moments earlier. Instinctively, dread coiled tighter within me as he approached that corner of chaos filled with tools scattered about carelessly, a testament to our frantic efforts to renovate this space together without him knowing what lay beneath it all. "What did you do here?" Michael asked casually while examining everything intently as if searching for clues hidden away beneath layers of paint and dust. My heart thudded louder in response while thoughts raced through my mind desperately trying to piece together how best to deflect any suspicions lingering behind those sharp blue eyes. "It needed some adjustments," I replied quickly while forcing myself not to fidget under his gaze, a practiced art at this point but still difficult when caught off guard so often lately. He nodded slowly but didn't seem satisfied by my answer. There was something deeper lurking within him too, his own struggles hidden beneath layers of work stress that had kept him away from home longer than usual lately. "What are you really doing here?" Michael finally pressed more seriously now, his tone shifting from casual inquiry into something heavier laced with concern creeping into every word spoken aloud between us both. "I told you, I'm just finishing up. But even as those words left my lips filled with false bravado meant only for self-preservation rather than truth, I couldn't shake off feeling watched closely still. Suddenly there came a soft knock at another door leading outside, the one Mark had escaped through moments ago, and all three of us froze simultaneously, hearing it reverberate throughout this small house filled now not only with chaos from renovations but also unspoken truths waiting desperately for release. What would happen next? Would it bring clarity or more confusion? The uncertainty loomed large over all of us standing there caught within this tangled web spun tightly around choices made without thinking fully through, consequences lingering behind every action taken along this path chosen unwittingly together. The knock echoed again, insistent and heavy with implication. I exchanged glances with my husband, his brow furrowed in confusion and concern. Mark had vanished, leaving behind a silence that felt like a storm brewing just beneath the surface. I could sense the tension in the air, thick enough to cut through. "What was that?" my husband asked, his voice low and cautious. I don't know," I stammered, trying to keep my composure. My heart raced as I contemplated the precariousness of our situation. All those moments spent with Mark felt like they were rushing back at me now, each one a reminder of choices made in fleeting moments of excitement. Another knock sounded, this time louder, more demanding. My husband stepped toward the door, uncertainty lingering in his posture. "Stay here," he instructed, glancing back at me with an intensity that made my stomach twist. I nodded but didn't move from my spot. The walls felt like they were closing in around me as he opened the door just enough to peek outside. "Mark," he called out cautiously. The moment stretched on indefinitely as I held my breath. What would happen if Mark was out there? Would he step inside and shatter whatever fragile piece we had left? My mind raced through all the scenarios, each one worse than the last. "Yeah," came Mark's voice from outside, casual but tinged with an undercurrent of tension. "Why are you here?" My husband's tone shifted to something sharper, more probing. "I came back to finish up some things," Mark replied nonchalantly, but I could hear the nervous edge lurking beneath his words. I wanted to scream for him to leave, for both of them to just walk away from this mess we had created together. But instead, I stood frozen as my husband pushed the door open wider. "Come in," he said begrudgingly. Mark stepped inside slowly, eyes darting between us as if gauging how much trouble he was truly in. The air crackled with unspoken accusations and half-truths that hung heavily above us like dark clouds ready to burst. "What's going on?" Mark asked cautiously, sensing the tension mounting between us. "Just some renovations," my husband replied curtly, crossing his arms defensively. "But it seems there's more happening here than just that." I felt exposed under their scrutiny, like a deer caught in headlights, and suddenly all those stolen moments flooded back, laughter over paint splatters, shared secrets whispered during late-night work sessions. Each memory now felt tainted by guilt and fear of discovery. "Kate?" My husband's voice broke through my reverie like a splash of cold water. "What's really going on?" My throat tightened as I struggled for words that wouldn't betray everything we had kept hidden thus far. "Tell me." His frustration bubbled over into anger now. It was clear he sensed something deeper lingering between us three. "It's nothing," I managed finally, though it sounded hollow even to me. Mark shifted uncomfortably beside me. His presence was both a comfort and a curse in this moment filled with tension. He looked at me imploringly as if begging me to say something more, to own up to whatever we had been dancing around for weeks now. But before I could respond further, my husband turned sharply toward Mark again. "You've been spending too much time here lately." Just helping Kate with the renovations, Mark defended himself quickly but defensively too. "Helping or something else?" The accusation hung thickly in the air between us like smoke from an unseen fire. "No. It's not what you think." I blurted out before realizing how desperate I sounded, a feeble attempt to defend both myself and him simultaneously. My husband narrowed his eyes at me, then back at Mark again. It was clear he wasn't satisfied with any of our answers so far. "What do you mean by something else?" The question loomed large. It felt like a noose tightening around my neck as silence enveloped us once again. A silence filled only by our collective breaths echoing against freshly painted walls that suddenly seemed too bright for this dark conversation unfolding within them. "I think you both need to be honest about what's really been happening," my husband finally stated flatly after what felt like hours passed between us without any resolution or clarity gained whatsoever. "I can explain," Mark started but faltered under my husband's piercing gaze directed solely at him now, the weight of suspicion hanging palpably heavy around him too, while I stood trapped between their conflicting energies swirling around me chaotically without respite or relief anywhere near sighted ahead. "It doesn't matter what you think you can explain," my husband interrupted sharply before turning back toward me again, the look on his face filled with pain mingled alongside disbelief etched deeply into every line across his features while anger simmered dangerously close beneath its surface still. "I trusted you." The words felt like daggers aimed directly at my heart, cutting deeper than anything physical ever could have managed within this moment wrought entirely by emotional turmoil shared amongst us three now standing here together amidst shattered expectations we'd once held so dear. Mark shifted awkwardly beside me again. There was something almost pleading about how he looked toward me then, hoping perhaps for some form of understanding or support amid this chaos spiraling outwards uncontrollably beyond our grasp altogether. But all I could do was stand silently rooted where fear gripped tightly around every inch of me instead, too paralyzed by uncertainty about what would come next after everything we'd let unfold thus far. Then suddenly breaking through all that tension came another knock, a different kind this time, a sharp rap against wood echoing ominously throughout our small home filled now not only with chaos from renovations but also unspoken truths waiting desperately for release.